Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight to our gathering to discuss a very important topic for the Montenegrin community. That is, why the name Montenegro is not being accepted in an equal and respected manner as the names of other nationalities within Liverpool City Council. Tonight we have amongst us our distinguished guests. The State Member for Liverpool, the Honourable Paul Lynch, MP, the Deputy Mayor of Liverpool, Councillor Tony Hadici with his partner and family, Liverpool City Councillor Mrs. Nadia Napolitano, and the President of the Historical Society for the City of Liverpool and District, Mrs. Judy Pack with partner. Dear guests, the Montenegrin Cultural and Art Society Njegos Sydney was established in 1977 to celebrate the traditions of Montenegro and the achievements of Montenegrin Australians. In particular, we honour the tradition and work of Njegos, our national poet and leader. There are a great deal of things for Australian Montenegrins to celebrate. The first Montenegrins to settle in Australia arrived way back in 1873, and Montenegrin Australians have been active members of Australia's diverse society ever since. Montenegro also fought on the same side as Australia during the First World War, and Montenegrin fighters were some of the strongest anti-Nazis during the Second World War. Montenegrin organisations in Australia were first formed 100 years ago, before World War I. Montenegrin Australians have also fought in the First World War as part of the Australian Imperial Forces, and they also fought in the Australian Army during World War II. Within New South Wales, our community is mainly concentrated within the Liverpool and Fairfield local government areas. This association for over 30 years has held many functions and events. Amongst many of the events, our society organised a function for the 500th anniversary of the first books ever printed in Cyrillic script amongst Southern Slavs called Oktoih. Copies of Oktoih were presented to the State Library as well. We have been received several times in State Parliament. We presented the gusle, our national string instrument, to the then Speaker of Parliament, the Honourable John Aquilina. We have also presented copies of Njegos' classic, The Mountain Wreath, to the State Parliamentary Library, and several years ago we made a special presentation to the then Premier, Mr. Bob Carr, in Parliament House. Montenegrin Australians are now part of the wonderfully diverse multicultural society of Sydney, and especially southwestern Sydney. This diversity, I think, is a great strength, and as a Montenegrin Australians, we're only too happy to continue to add to this strength. But we also firmly believe that we should, just like other societies, be duly recognised for our contributions and sacrifices to Australia. Now, as per our customs, when we have guests come to our functions for the first time, we would like to bestow upon them a gift. We'll be handing out copies of Njegos' masterpiece, The Mountain Wreath. The Mountain Wreath is the magnus opus of our literature. To date, it has been translated in 22 languages around the world. And in English, it was first translated by James W. Wiles back in 1930. Njegos, whose name our cultural society carries in world literature, is talked about in the same breath as Shakespeare, which is why I'm confident you will enjoy reading The Mountain Wreath. I would now like to call upon Deputy Mayor Tony Hadici and Councillor Nadia Napolitano to come to the stage to receive their copies of The Mountain Wreath. I would like to call upon Mrs. Judy Pack up to the stage. In lieu of our forthcoming donation to the Historical Society, we'd like to offer you a small token. I'd just like to sincerely thank the president of our Cultural and Art Society Njegos, Mr. Slobodan Lazovic. Amongst our younger generation, affectionately known as Uncle Bob, without your hard work towards this project, we will not have anything left for our future generations. So thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome you all and thank you for your time tonight to be here with us. Special Honorable Paul Lynch, Minister for Aging, Minister for Disability Services, and Minister for Aboriginal Affairs. Thank you very much, Paul, for your time tonight. I thank you, Liverpool City Deputy Mayor, Councillor Mr. Tony Heciti, and also Councillor Ms. Nadia Napoletano. Thank you very much for your tonight's I take this opportunity to congratulate you both for 200 years celebrating Liverpool District First Macquarie Tale. Our greeting going to be to all your councillor colleagues, Liverpool City Mayor Mrs. Wendy Wola, for our best wishes and prosperity through this celebration for a benefit to all Liverpool District residents and community. I believe we're going to be in another occasion and get opportunity to congratulate, to everyone. Of course, we're waiting for our name to be here to put it on this district here. Also, dear friends, our congratulations go to wonderful person, Mrs. Judy Pack. About 50 years existing historical society for Liverpool and district, which is also celebrating these days. We wish you many more success years for your presidency. Thank you very much for your help. Now, please accept my apologies. I want to address and say some few words in my language to all these people. Poštovani prijatelji, želim da vas pozdravim i istaknem vašu pažnju i dolazak večeras na možda malo i neobično okupljanje. Ovaj datum je bio predviđen da bude uvertira proslavljanja imena naše Crne Gore, da pored tradicije i kulturnih predstavljanja od strane ovog društva u svojoj 34. godišnjoj aktivnosti bude geografski upisana na ovom kontinentu. Ova inicijativa nije bila inicijativa za pojedinca niti za grupu. Ova inicijativa za sve doseljenike Crne Gore i njihove prijatelje. Večeras smo svi zajedno učesnici, večeras su i naši najmlađi za ovu našu zajedničku akciju imali svoj zadatak koje su uspješno obavili. Svako je uradio svoj posao prema zaduženju i svojim ličnim mogućnostima. Nama je to svima bila obaveza večeras ovdje. Obaveza prema našem mjestu rođenja, obaveza prema Crnoj Gori i njenoj svijetloj istoriji. Obaveza prema onim najprvim koji su došli na ove prostore, a na koje se posebno pozivamo zbog ove inicijative. Oni najprvi koji su došli ovdje nisu imali mogućnosti, a možda i prilike kao mi. To je bilo drugo vrijeme. Ali oni su nam ovdje ostavili svoje časno ime i svijetle primjere na koje možemo uvijek biti ponosni. To su osvjetljeni puti i pravci kako se voli i poštuje svoje otadžbine. Ovo nekoliko mladih ljudi koji su bili uključeni u akciju, oni svakako trebaju vašu podršku, a i pomoć. Trebaju vašu aktivnost, kao i njihovih vršnjaka, da zajednički radi i nastupaju za interese naše tradicije i kulturnog nasljeđa. To bi bila naša obaveza, to bi bio naš interes za korist naših budućih generacija ovdje, da se možda neko u neko vrijeme sjeti i nas da smo nešto učinili za opstanak i prepoznavanje imena naše domovine i njene svijetle istorije. Uostalom, to nas obavezuje zemlja legendi i ona to s pravom očekuje od nas. Moram sa zahvalnošću da istaknem medije našeg iseljeništva, vesti, mis televiziju, kao i novosti, koji su uvijek tu da zabilježe i prenesu naše aktivnosti objektivno u pravo vrijeme našim sunarodnicima na ovom kontinentu. Poštovani prijatelji, osjećam se slobodnim da vam se lično svima obratim kad bude došlo vrijeme za naš park, kada dođe taj dan da se radi oko natpisa za njega. Sa velikim zadovoljstvom ću zatražiti od svih vas da učestvujete u tom završnom dijelu koje smo mi obavezni pribaviti. Siguran sam da to mogu mnogi pojedinci sami izvršiti, ali to nije to. Ako mi svi zajedno ne učestvujemo onoliko koliko ko može, to će onda biti ono pravo zajedničko finale, kao što je i ova kompletna inicijativa i akcija zajednička. I na kraju želim da se pogrešno ne shvati, ali smatramo za potrebno da pročitam imena porodica koje su njihovim donacijama samoinicijativno pomogli večeras izdatke i tako pomogli skromna materijalna sredstva ovog društva za večeras. Oni koji nisu sada na ovom spisku, bit će prilike da budu i sljedeći put. Porodice Zorana Đurišića, Milivoja Nikača, Miloša i Nikole Maslovarić, Milorada Jokanovića, Tomislava Medojevića, Ilije Vujovića, Grubana Papića i moja porodica. Za noćas. Živjeli i srećno vam druženje za večeras i za vas.
I'd like to call upon Mrs. Carol North Samarajic to come up to the stage, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I do so as one of the first members of the Montenegrin Culture and Arts Society Njegos, Sydney. In fact, if I remember rightly, my membership card has a single digit, so it goes back in 1977, I think. Over 30 plus years, I've often been referred to, and Slobo will agree here, as an adopted Montenegrin. And as such, I speak now. My daughter, Andrea, will also speak to you, but she will speak as a Pola Crnogorka. We have, and I say we as an adopted person, we have a small country. Not many people, but we are known as a warrior clan. We're probably as small as my copy of Gorski Venets. We're small, we're not a big number of people, but we are tenacious and will go into battle for our rights. Many of you have known Bogoljub Samajic, a journalist of some repute, a nephew of Sava Kovacevic, and from a family of strong Montenegrin fighters and lawmakers. And from that stance, Andrea and I would like to speak. We stand here today in Bogoljub's place because were he alive, he would be speaking on everyone's behalf tonight, probably with more eloquent words. I wish to enlighten you on the status of the park that we have sought to have named Montenegrin Park. Some may see this request as a minor thing, but for us it is major, and the rejection thus far by the Liverpool City Council, for whatever reason, has raised our ire, especially mine. When the name Montenegro Park was rejected at the council on the 22nd of March, I sought information from a number of people, including the mayor and deputy mayor. It supposedly came down to the name Montenegro, not fitting into the theme for streets and parks in the Hinchinbrook area. However, no one actually showed me documentation which verified the theme and what had happened thus far. Council minutes and draft minutes, by their lack of reasons and discussion points, did not shed any light on the situation until yesterday. I asked three questions of a council employee who finally gave me a full and reasonable account of what had occurred. I had learned from council minutes that on the 22nd of March, Montenegro was rejected as a park name in Rossini Drive. And I think you all know that. It was rejected on the 22nd of March. And on the 19th of April, the little patch of ground that we hoped would become Montenegro Park, Nash Park, had been named Vitalia Park. Hence our hopes for that park were dashed. My questions and the answers received were this: what was the process behind the rejection of the name Montenegro and the replacement with Vitalia? I was told, originally the proposed name Montenegro was proposed for a road within the government road precinct of Hinchinbrook at the street naming committee meeting of the 28th of May 2009. So this is going back, in fact it goes back further than 2009, where it was considered inappropriate due to the northwestern town's name theme already existing in that area. And that we understand. If we're told there's a theme and it doesn't fit in, that's fine, we understand, we're not without understanding. The name Montenegro was retained for use at a future date at a more appropriate location. So our hopes are pretty up. And the street naming committee at the meeting of 28th considered the name Montenegro Park for an unnamed park on 851 Rossini Drive, Hinchinbrook. Now it seems reasonable. We have a patch of land, it is unnamed, and the street naming committee said, well, Montenegrin Park would be a reasonable name. Do you see a problem with that? No, but there was. So what happened was it was sent to council for adoption at the council meeting of the 22nd of March, where it was rejected for not meeting the theme of that area. So yet again, we don't meet the theme. At the next street naming committee meeting of the 20th of March 2010, the rejection of the name Montenegro was discussed. We've had a lot of discussion, but not a lot of action. And the alternative name of Vitalia was proposed. And this met the theme of the area, so this proposed name was sent to the council meeting of the 19th of April 2010. It was adopted. So thus, what we thought was going to be our park is now Vitalia Park. I might also add that the minutes of the 22nd of March were accepted on the 19th of April as a true and accurate record of the meeting after an amendment. On page 23, Montenegro Park and item COM10 should be taken out. So now we're out of the minutes. No mention of Montenegrin Park being given further consideration. Nothing in the minutes, we were just taken out of the minutes. I then asked, what was the theme within Hinchinbrook, specifically the area around the park? Because I'd been asking everybody, what's the theme, what's the theme? Some said, oh, Italian. In actual fact, there are 4 themes in Hinchinbrook. And they are Islands of Australia, Italian theme, northwestern New South Wales towns, and birds. So if we had a Montenegrin bird, guys, we would have been in. Because on the 19th of April, a long list of names, including Croatia, Dalmatia, France, and Singapore, were accepted for future use in Edmondson Park, I then asked why Montenegro had not been added to that list. As a history graduate, I was willing to take a punt on the theme for those areas, being the Boer War, the First World War, and the Second World War. And so the themes in Edmondson Park are war themes. I would then ask the possibility of inclusion of Montenegro within the naming of Edmondson Park. I was given this response yesterday. Given Montenegro's association with the Allied powers in World War I, the naming committee will be added, the name will be added to the next street naming committee meeting onto their agenda for discussion for inclusion as a park name in Edmondson Park. So all is not lost. We may get a park in Edmondson Park. However, I was told, please note that the name, if accepted by the street naming committee, must be endorsed by council prior to use. Councils are elected by the people for the people. I would like to know when Liverpool City Council will endorse the name Montenegro for Nash Park. It has been rejected too many times in the last year, put on agendas, deferred, removed, reconsidered, and I believe that it's time to say dosta. And as I promised earlier, my Crnogorka, she would just like to say a few words as well, because those words were just information that I found out, to know where we're going. I think she has a little bit of a twist on it.
As you can see, I am a Crnogorka. I'm going to do the cliched routine of saying I had a speech prepared and then throw it away, because I'll speak from the heart. As my mother mentioned earlier, many of you probably know my father, Bogoljub, so you know that he would have a lot to say about this. So today, I'm saying the words that he is not here to say. As Milan said earlier, being a second-generation Australian is terribly important to us as Montenegrins. As such, we want to preserve that heritage for us as citizens of 2170. I was born here, I have grown up here, and like the park, I may be Australian born, but I represent the Montenegrin community in Liverpool. My mother mentioned that there were several themes for Hinchinbrook, and the reason why Montenegro Park was rejected was because Montenegro doesn't fit in with the theme of Italy. However, the reason why I believe we're here today is so we can operate from the same page instead of having misinformation and miscommunication. I think if we were communicating better, we could have told the Liverpool Council that Queen Eleanor of Italy was actually Jelena Petrovic Njegos. So the Queen of Italy was actually from Montenegro. So Montenegro Park technically fits in with the Italian theme. Also, Montenegro, my Italian is not good, but it's good enough to know that Montenegro stands for Black Mountains in Italian. So having Montenegro surrounded by Italians in Hinchinbrook would be quite appropriate given the events from World War II. The final thing I'd like to say is just to reiterate the importance of having Montenegro Park somewhere here in Liverpool. I know that the arguments of Montenegro fitting the Italian theme have no use anymore. We know it's named Vitalia Park now. However, we still want a park, and we sure as hell, deserve one. So that's why I'm standing up here today, and I know others are standing up here to say we just want what we deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol and Andrea. Would anyone else like to come up and say a few words? Yeah. Would the councillors like up to say a few words, or? Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and firstly, Mr. Slobodan, thank you for your kind invitation, and I did promise you that whether you did or not invite me, I was still coming, but thank you for the invite anyway. The Honourable Paul Lynch, Councillor Napolitano, Mrs. Judy Pack, and friends. Apparently I'm the bad guy in all this, and I suppose from bad comes good. I actually get to meet you all, I get to be here with you tonight, and hopefully build a strong relationship with you all. There is somebody that I'd really like to thank, and that's a young man sitting over there called Marco, who one afternoon I pick up my phone as I normally do, and it was him on the other line, not knowing who he was. And if I could repeat the conversation without offending anyone, I would, but the conversation we had for the 3 or 4 minutes we did is probably not appropriate here tonight. But it did lead to good things. I sat down there with Marco, and then from there I got to meet Mr. Slobodan, and then here I am tonight. Just a couple of things I do want to say is, firstly, don't believe everything you read in the newspaper. Believe half of it and throw the other half out. There is nothing whatsoever that I have against your community or your group. something was put up to council. I didn't know all of you people, so I don't have anything against anybody in this room. I do know little Mia because my daughter and her daughter went to the same preschool last year. But there is nothing from my end that that I want you guys to feel that I'm against you guys whatsoever. You want a park named after you, it'll then go. I was talking to Judy, and I have been since all this blew up. And she is doing her research, and if she doesn't find the right park for you, it's her fault, because she is the one. She is the one that pretty much names any park and any street in this town, and we really do appreciate that. But please, I know there's a lot said, and there's a lot that's been said, and there's a lot more that will be said. My message to you is simple, is clear. I do not have anything against anybody in this room or anybody in the whole community of Liverpool. Something did come to council. Yes, it was rejected. Yes, I was the one that made an issue of the thing, so I'll stand up here and say, yes, it was me that made the issue. And I won't hide from that fact, but there was a reason for making an issue of that. It wasn't against you guys whatsoever, and I'm sure it will come back, and I'm sure we'll move together forward, and it'll be stronger and better than ever. Thank you very much. And if anyone wants to ask me anything, I'm more than happy to answer any questions. It was, as stated earlier on, and Judy, hopefully you'll vouch for me on this one here. When Judy puts together the names for the streets, because she's named most of the streets and parks in the area, they do fall into themes. And I'm going to be honest with you, it didn't fall into that theme. When it did, and I was part of the street naming committee previously, when it was discussed, when Carol actually mentioned last year it was brought up. When they do name an area, and for example at the moment Edmondson Park's being named, it's after the wars. So when we do an area, when Judy does an area, she does it after a theme, and we stick to that theme. Now, with the older areas, okay, there was probably no themes back then, so it will fit in somewhere in Liverpool LGA. Or Judy and I can assure you that. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Anyone else would like to say a few words? Or?
Can I thank the Montenegrin community and the association for inviting me to be here this evening. It's certainly not the first association function I've been at, although you guys have been organising and operating as a society for many years, well before I was a Member of Parliament. You've been accepted at Parliament House on a number of occasions. You've presented things to premiers, deputy premiers, speakers. You've got a proud record of achievement as an organisation. You've got a proud record of history as Montenegrins, of course. You've got a great tradition of being fighters. One of my passions in life is history, and certainly the history of the anti-fascist struggles that Montenegrins were involved in during the Second World War is something that's incredibly impressive and is a great link, frankly, to Australians. You've got a great cultural tradition. The Mountain Wreath, which I'm sure people will the people that were given it this evening will enjoy reading. It's a great bit of history and culture that's central to liberation struggles and tells you a great deal about the history of the Balkans and about the struggles against the Ottoman Empire and all of those sorts of things. My own tastes in Montenegrin literature are probably slightly more controversial because my favourite Montenegrin writer is Milovan Djilas, whose work I've been reading for the best part of 30-odd years. He's slightly more controversial than Njegos, but he's still an extraordinarily interesting person. You've got every right to be proud of those traditions, and you've got every right to be proud of your presence here in Australia. You've been here since the 1870s. You are a very real part of our extraordinary multicultural society in this part of the world. We've got lots of strengths in southwestern Sydney, and particularly in Liverpool and Fairfield. One of those great strengths comes from that cultural diversity, from the multiculturalism. And it's communities like yours that give us that strength. It's communities like yours that make this such a really good and interesting place to live. We get a great strength out of that multiculturalism, and you're a critical part of that. In fact, you're almost the traditional Australian story. All of us, for the last couple of 100 years, have basically the same history. Unless you've got Aboriginal heritage, we've all come from somewhere else, come here and made our life here. It doesn't matter whether it's someone like me whose grandfather came out about 100 years ago, or people who came out themselves or their children. We all have that history of moving from one part of the world and coming here and making this our home. That is the traditional Australian story. People that don't get that, of course, don't actually get what it is to be Australian. People that don't understand that and don't accept that and don't celebrate that are not themselves good Australians. Part of that multicultural society is acknowledging where you've come from, acknowledging your traditions. And yes, it includes things like street naming. It includes places of origin being recognised and acknowledged. If you go through the street directory, you can see a whole range of places from all around the world that have been acknowledged in Sydney. Just go to the Sydney Road Directory. Start with B: Belgium, Bolivia, Bougainville, Batavia, Brittany. In April, the council, as I think Carol mentioned, approved a number of names: Malaya, France, Manchuria, Okinawa, Croatia, Dalmatia. They're a stone's throw from Montenegro. Dalmatia has a street named after it in Karamar. Croatia, a place in Quakers Hill. You've got to start to wonder why Montenegro hasn't got a Guernsey in some of this at some stage. The council was first asked to name something after Montenegro in 2006. Council sent back a letter in 2007 saying in principle they would agree to that, they've just got to find the right place. I would like to think this process is actually going to come to an end at some stage. It seems an extraordinary amount of effort and work just to get something named to recognise the contribution and the treatment, or the contribution and the efforts that have been put in by the Montenegrin community to this part of Sydney. And can I perhaps conclude by saying, as Slobodan has told me to say, Dobro večer.
Thank you, Mr. Paulich. Thanks very much for your words. Okay, then we'll just enjoy the night. Thanks so much for being here. Thank you.